Hello everyone. Just wanted to give you a quick video about how to get started on assignment 1 because there's a lot of moving parts and I want you to have something you can go back to and replay to see how to get everything up and running. Now the first thing to do, if you haven't done it already, is to get the code. The code is actually hosted online on a service called GitHub, and you have a command on your computer called git to interact with that service. So let's say that I'm going to put this in this folder downloads, and I'll run this command to grab this code from a website called GitHub, where I'm storing it. And if we look in the folder, it's made that new homework1_virtual cities. I'll change into that directory. And let's start off by editing simple scene. Okay, I've already provided you a little bit of code there. I think I trust myself, so I didn't write anything malicious in this code. Now, okay, so I think this is what we should be starting with here. Now let's look at the first task. First thing I want you to do is draw a tree. And to draw a tree, I'm going to draw a thin, tall black cylinder with something called an ellipsoid, which is just a sphere that I've squashed in a little bit. Okay? So like a lollipop tree. Now, let me make a method. I'll call it draw tree. And I won't have it return anything. And so what should this take in as parameters? Well, the trees, I can vary their height, but otherwise they should be flat on the ground. So what I'll do is I'll pass along, you see like here for the sign, I'll pass along the scene. Talk a little bit more about what this ampersand is doing here later, but this passes this by reference. So it's the same scene across all the methods. And I'll vary my center at x coordinate, and I'll vary my center z coordinate. So x is left, right, z is behind me and in front of me. So positive z is behind me, negative z is in front of me. And like I said, the height of the tree can vary. So I'll pass in the height as well. Now remember this nice little trick. Once I have my method set up, you should always do this right away. In Visual Studio Code, if I type / ** and hit enter, it sets up my method documentation. So the first thing you should do is fill this in. Set an intention for yourself. What are you trying to do? What are you passing in? And what should you be returning? So the first thing I'm passing in is the scene, and that's this little virtual world that I'm building. And it's an object, which we haven't talked about objects yet, but for now you can think of it as a designer variable type that comes along with some methods. So it comes along with all these methods to draw little primitive shapes that I've given you. So you can draw a box, cylinder, cone, sphere, ellipsoid, and special mesh. And you do that just by saying scene dot whatever method. Okay? But otherwise, all the methods that we're going to write are going to be global methods on their own that you can call from anywhere. All right, so let's finish defining these variables here. So center x is the center of the tree in x, where positive x is to the right, negative x is to the left. This is the center of the tree in z, where positive z is behind me, and negative z is in front of me. And finally, we have the height of the tree. Okay, so as I said, a tree is made from a cylinder and an ellipsoid. So here's what I want to do now. So let me jump over to the cylinder and the ellipsoid. Let's look at a little bit of information about each of those that I gave you. So you can see I gave an example here. I said draw a yellow cylinder centered at 0, 1, -2. So the first three parameters are the position, x, y, and z. And then we have the height, or no, sorry, we have the radius, which a cylinder is a bunch of circles stacked up on each other, right? So this is the radius of the circles. If I made this bigger, the cylinder would get wider. If I made this smaller, the cylinder would get thinner. And then here's the height, and finally the color, which is all red, all green, and together that makes yellow, no blue. Now just to reiterate that, pay attention to these little links I have here. This is something you want to get used to as you look at other people's code. if they've done a good job and they've done their method documentation, then oftentimes you'll be able to view that documentation in a reading-friendly format. So if I click on this link here, I'll see exactly the information I need to use this. And I can treat this as a black box, so I don't really need to worry about exactly how it's working. But I should be guaranteed that if I put this information in, that it will make a cylinder to my specifications. So I know that the first three parameters are for the position, and then I have the radius, height, and then I have red, green, and blue. If I didn't know that, I would just think, oh, this is a method that takes 8 doubles. And it's like, what are those doubles? There's a lot of parameters here, okay? So we have to be kind of aware of what they are. Now, when I'm doing this kind of thing, sometimes I'll just go straight to the documentation and just copy and paste and put in my code. So I know I want to draw a cylinder here, okay? So I'm going to say scene.addCylinder. Now I guess I'll use for the center and X, the center that got passed along. For the center and Y, maybe I'm not sure yet. But let me just say 1. I don't know. We'll see what happens. Center and Z, I'll use what I passed along. Now the radius, again, I'm going to maybe guess at what that is, okay? I don't want to give you the full answer, but I'll show you how to play around with it. So maybe I'll just say the radius is 1, 2. The height is whatever I passed along. And test yourself for a moment. What should the red, the green, and the blue be if this is going to be brown? So take a moment and see if you can figure that out. And just to remind you, I gave you this little color widget here. So if I look at this, let's get a nice brown here. So maybe 98, 22, 22. Let me see, did I tell you what brown to do? I don't think so. Oh no, I said, okay, 102, 51, 0. So mostly red, a little bit of green, no blue. So I'll just copy and paste that right in there. All right, cool. So that's not too terrible. Now, if I just make this code, nothing's going to change yet. Yeah, and actually, I know I'm supposed to draw an ellipsoid too, but let me start just by drawing the cylinder. Because remember, one of my debugging rules is to compile your code and run it early and often, okay? Every few lines of code, you should try to rebuild your program in Z. So I would just type make simple scene. And good, it built without any problems. And now if I run the program, okay, so first step is edit the code. Second step is compile the code. And I provided a make file here, so what's actually going on behind the scenes is it's running this command, this whole command. So it's calling G++, the C++ compiler. It's making the program. And now if I run it, well, let me list the directory before. And if I run it, and now I list the directory, it made a new file, simplescene.json. Okay. Now this file has the information that I need to go view the virtual city that I made. So where did I put that? That is viewer. Okay, here we go. Click here to launch the scene viewer in your browser. So now here's where I go and I browse to that file and I open it up, simplescene.json. And here it is. Now nothing's changed yet. So I still have just these two signs and home are floating there, right? And the floor that I made, which is just a huge box. But that's because I didn't call this method from anywhere from the main. Okay, so main just calls draw scene. And right now draw scene is still just doing the same thing. It's adding these 4 lights, it's adding these 2 cameras, and then it's adding the box, the 2 signs, and Homer. So let me draw a scene. Or sorry, let me draw a tree. Let me actually call that method. I have to call it here, otherwise it's never gonna run. Sure, I made the method, but I can't get that from any code path that starts in main. So I will say draw tree, right? And the nice thing that Visual Studio Code does is it reminds me of what the parameters are. Okay, so first parameter is the scene. Next parameter is the center and X. How about I put it a little bit to the left of me? So I'll say -2, so -2 meters. Center and Z. Okay, so remember, positive Z is behind me and negative Z is in front of me. So this is the coordinate system that's used in 3D modeling. So let me say, I'll put it in front of me. So I'll say maybe -4. And height, let me make that, I don't know, I'll say the tree is maybe 4 meters. Okay. So I added that line now. So now when the main runs in Simple Scene, it's going to go to this method, it's going to do all this stuff, and it's going to call draw tree, which will jump up here, and so far it's just adding a brown cylinder. So let's see what that looks like. So I'm going to make this again. I'm going to run this again. And then I'm going to go here and open up this file again. And now I see a big old cylinder here, which that's not really the right proportion, okay? But it's a start, and now I have something I can play with. Just to show you, if I was going to do this again, maybe I'll put another tree that is actually to my right and in front of me. So I'll recompile this. I'll run it. Let me open it again. And now I see those 2 trees. They're not really trees yet. I have a little bit of work to do. But at least it looks like my method is working as I call it. Okay. So just one more little thing I'll do, and then I'll set you loose again. I know I need to add an ellipsoid, right? So the way to add an ellipsoid is, well, the first 3 parameters are the center of this thing. The next 3 parameters are actually how wide is it along each axis. So this one, you see it's a little bit taller than it is wide. So I said it's 1 meter between the left and right, but actually 2 meters up in the y direction, and 1 meter deep along the z-axis. I think for our tree, we're going to want it to be kind of flat along this direction. So almost like my hand. So along x and along y, up and down, I'll have it be a little bit bigger than it is deep. So it shouldn't be too deep. So let me just, yeah, and you can look at the documentation, but this example says it all really. So if I go back up here and I say, okay, I want to draw a green ellipsoid. Well, let me keep this comment here just to help me. Okay, so I'll center this at CZ. Maybe I'll put it up at, let's see, yeah, the height of height. You're gonna have to play with this. So I'm not saying this is necessarily right, but we'll see what it looks like. And then, as I said, along the x-axis, so left, right, and along the y-axis, up, down, I'll make this wider than it is deep. I'll make it not so deep, maybe like 0.2. And it's supposed to be green. So red, 0. R, G, green, 255. Blue, 0. All right, so let me try to compile this. Remember, you write just a little bit of code, you compile right away. Now I run it, and let's open up that scene again. Okay, now where did it go? So one thing I noticed that's a little bit weird is it looks like I accidentally put these, I might have flipped the X and the Z. Because see how these two, the two trunks of the trees are separated along the X-axis, but it looks like these are separated along the Z. So let me check that. Yes, I did switch the X and the Z. Okay, so I want to use the X that I passed along there, same as the X that I used for the cylinder, and same Z as I used for the cylinder. So see how I did that? That's what I call visual debugging. I look at the output and I say, huh, these are the right width apart, but that's the wrong axis. So what happened there? Okay, so let me build this again, run it again, open it again. And now I see not really a great tree, and it's going to need a little work, but this is the beginning of what you would need to do. Okay? Maybe it should be a little wider than that. That's a pretty thin layer. It looks almost like a little wafer. All right, so let me leave it at that. I will send this over on Discord. And please, 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 if you have any questions, ask them on Discord, send me a message, send an anonymous message with Voltaire, right? So Voltaire, just to remind you, if you go back to the main page. Let's see, is it under participation? No, it's under, let's see if we scroll up a little bit. Okay, yeah. So under Discord/anonymous questions, you can ask an anonymous question. And I would encourage you to do that if you're not comfortable asking one publicly. So please ask questions. I'll be extending the deadline till Friday because I really want everybody to nail this. Okay? So let's all get through it together. Have fun. I can't wait to see what you come up with. See you on Wednesday.